Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Between the Lines. My name is John Lofton. So happy you guys are here with me today. I'm going to have full disclosure right now. This was pre-recorded a couple days earlier than today, being August 15th, 2021. And that is due to my wife, my son, and I. We are at the Iowa State Fair currently as you're watching this video. If you're looking at this on the live premiere on the BTL-LIVE YouTube channel here, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And we would really appreciate it. We're brand new to this whole platform and the show and all of that, and we really would appreciate all the support we can get from you guys today, and it would mean a lot. And I know that this show is starting to take off just a little bit. The guy who comes in door to door for us and has a lot of really good meat products, just throwing it out there, Heartland Beef. You guys ever need his number? Yeah, hit me up. Anyway, not sponsored, but it was really cool to see him because it was the first time someone had who isn't part of my inner circle, let's say. Not that I don't like, his name's Eric, by the way. Not that I don't like him or anything, but it was just interesting to see someone who I don't talk to regularly actually say to me, "Hey, I ran across your podcast," and and I'm like, "Wow. Well, did you make sure you like and subscribe?" That's so cool to me. It was the first time since I launched the show that's happened where someone who I really don't communicate very much with, has come up to me and said, "Hey, I saw your podcast," and all that. And I'm just like, "Wow, cool." I love it. That was really cool for me. And so I appreciate all the love and support you guys have always sent us. And so, but today's show, as the title said, I'm the best. Well, what does that mean? And I'm going to point something out here you probably almost can see, but if it wasn't for the microphone, and we're going to be talking all about that. Now, even though I'm not live right now, even though I want you guys to know that I am still going to be responding to comments and questions once we get back. So please leave them all down below, and I will definitely get to as many as we can. And if they're really cool ones, I will share them next week on the 22nd. So, but anyway. All right, so we're going to go ahead and dive right into things today. So I'm the best. What? We can all say that. If you watch the Olympics for any time, you probably heard the GOAT, when describing Simone Biles, because she's the greatest gymnast, who's ever done gymnastics. She does tricks that no one else does. She has 2 or 3 tricks that she does that were named after her or that she invented even. And because they're so challenging, she could almost do an average performance and still win gold. That's how good she is, right? Well, if you ask my wife though, what I'm the best at, apparently, I'm the world's best husband and daddy. I can't remember how long ago. Yes, I'm wearing sweats. Forgive me. So, but if you ask my wife, I'm the world's best husband and daddy. How many of you guys actually have that shirt or have some things like best dad, I remember the first year Father's Day came around and, I don't know, maybe this wasn't the first year. I think this might year 2. But I, you usually get stuff like that, right? As dads, either it's a tie or something like that, and are we the world's best dad? I don't know, subjective. I mean, I don't think I am. I kind of just fumble my way through and just sort of figure it out as I go. But I really don't think I'm the best. I think that, there's dads out there who are rock star dads doing really good work for the community, raising 6, 7 kids on top of it. And they're just super dad. And I'm struggling to hold on to just one kid and maybe keep him from making some of the same mistakes I did when I grew up. I mean, for me, being a dad is all about that and just trying to get him to know Christ as soon as possible. That is the goal. And if I've done those 2 things, then I've succeeded. Whether he grows up to be president of the United States, some big shot doctor or lawyer, or, a car mechanic, I don't really care. As long as he's productive and he knows his good moral standings and he does his best in the world, that's about all I really care about. At 18, he's not just going to be sitting on the couch. I promise you that much. But, those are my main goals for him as a dad, but like I said, am I the world's best dad? No. Am I the world's best, YouTuber? No. I'm happy you guys are listening to me, and I appreciate it. Hopefully I'm at least decent, otherwise you probably wouldn't be watching me in the first place. You probably already tuned out by now. So maybe I'm doing something right here, but do I think I'm the best? No. Am I the best singer, even though I've auditioned for shows like The Voice on NBC? No. And am I really like the best at anything? No. So what makes someone the best? Is there really a best? Well, I think it's truly subjective. And this is kind of where I'm going to need a lot of external feedback after the show today. This is something I'd really like to follow up with maybe next week or in a couple weeks. I'm trying to line up some interviews with some folks here and see what we can do to actually bring some other content and people and personalities onto the show. So I'm hoping that comes into fruition. But as far as, being the best, I was trying to think how many times a world record has been broken. You guys ever, when you were a kid, watched or looked at the Guinness Book of World Records? People who did the best or the longest or the highest, whatever the case may be. And they got some really obscure ones like world's largest pizza. And, they have this ginormous, like, mile-long pizza or something like that. And I think that those are really cool. Does it make them the world's best pizza maker, though? No. They managed to pull off a stunt and had a really big pizza. But they were the best, apparently, at making the longest. But, so it's really subjective. And when I think about this, too, when you say you're the best, or when you say that you do something better than anybody else can do it, what are you really saying to the world? Are you gloating? Are you being a little self-centered? Have you blocked your mind out from thinking that you could ever be beat? Are you blocking this whole like intuition of, I'm the best? Does it hinder some humbleness? And I think that that's the other key point that I wanted to kind of really hit on today is how can we be striving to be better without ever calling ourselves the best? I don't think that calling ourselves ever the best at something really, I think it's more self-serving than it is a help to us. And I'm going to explain why here, as I always do. In every one of my shows, I always put this out there so everyone can hear me when I say this. When I'm making a show and I'm preparing for it, and this week I had less time to prepare for this than some other shows. I usually get a couple more days out of this, and I'm recording this, like I said, on Friday, and the show won't air until Sunday. But when I make a show, I'm always thinking about a couple things. One, how do I stay as objective as possible? And number two, how do I present things in a way so that I can try to take maybe two opposite opinions from each other and then sort of bring them together? And it's tough because in my own mind, I don't live always, dead smack in the middle. I kind of wander left and right a little bit. But does that make me more biased than others? Am I saying that innately then? Am I better than anybody else? That is a hard urge to fight, because when you say you're the best, you're saying that your way or the way that you did something was the right way, that your technique when you went about doing it is the right way. And so when I think about, all the stuff behind me, all this equipment and all of that, do I have the best equipment in the world? In my opinion, yeah. This sounds great. I've never had a better sounding or better looking, presence in front of a camera or behind a microphone. This Shure SM7B, I think, is the best broadcast microphone that's on the market, and it's been out for decades, and I don't think it can be beat for a broadcast standard microphone. Now, what is it, the RM20 or something like that? There's a really old one too. It's a ribbon mic. Electro Voice, I think, is who makes it. Anyway, RE20 or think or something like that. Forgive me if I'm incorrect. If anyone who happens to be a more microphone aficionado than I am, please let me know. But I think it's the RE20 now that I think about it. Anyway, that's not really the point, but it's still subjective. In my ear, when I'm listening, it sounds good, like really good. And I really don't have to do a whole lot to this mic in order to get this sound that I am the most happy with. Now, on your guys' end, does this sound like the best YouTube voiceover you've ever heard in your life? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe let me know. Does my mic suck? Should I be using something else? Does the lighting behind me, like this red and blue weird thing going on, making it look like I got cops behind me or something, Does that look good to you guys? Is my lighting good? Do you think it's the best lighting out there? Probably not. But it is the best that I've seen. As far as for what my setup is, I think there's better lighting setups. They usually cost a lot more money than mine do, though. But I don't always think that money buys quality either. So when you say something like you've got the best setup, or you don't have to look hard on YouTube to find people who say, best sound system. I was showing my wife earlier, like, because we were at, actually last night we were at the fair, and we saw Casting Crowns in concert. By the way, highly recommend it. Really cool. They didn't need, they had kind of cool flashing lights and stuff like that, but the band itself and the set, there wasn't really any props. They had the drums on a platform and everybody else was just around them. It looked like, they were trying to fill a big stage, but really they were just a small band, like 5-piece band. And so they made it look really simple, but also it sounded really good. Now, to give a little bit of credence here, if anyone happened to be at that concert last night, the band apparently had some issues getting in from Chicago. They made it, but their plane didn't, and they actually chose to drive all the way to Des Moines from Chicago just to make it, and they literally made it like 20 minutes before the concert was supposed to start. And so, they didn't really get a sound check, obviously, and it showed at first. It really did. Maybe to their audio engineer's credit, their front of house guy, he made the best of a bad situation. I could tell, even in the nosebleeds where we were sitting, that there was definitely some issues with the frontline audio. They were only getting like half the speakers, their throw speakers up on top, their array. It wasn't until like halfway through the show when I could actually really tell that they were coming through. Compared to the opening act, even, who was much louder, much, I wouldn't say better sounding, because that's really objective, because it was more of a pop Christian singer, Jordan Feliz, if you guys have ever heard him. I made this joke earlier, just a side note. He's like the Bruno Mars of Christian music, and I'd love for someone to dare me tell me I'm wrong, because I don't think I can. Anyway, point is, we were there, and so the sound, I'm a critique when it comes to sound. Like, I really fine-tune this stuff. I would definitely call myself an audiophile, for sure, 100%. Why? Well, my eyesight's not the best. You guys always knows my eyes wandering around, so a lot of times I'm relying on my hearing a whole lot more than I rely on my eyes sometimes. And I can hear little things like that, even in the midst of bass, and there was a lot of bass, and I'm sure a lot of it had to do with where we're sitting up in the, you guys ever seen the fairgrounds? I wish I could have had a picture up here to show you guys, but it's like big canopy that overhangs half of it, and all this bass, it sort of comes in like a cone, if you will. And by the way, 900 tons of steel went into making the grandstand. I don't know, random fact, I saw on one of the side screens. But anyway, all of that information comes, and we're sitting in the back. So there's like a wall behind us, actually directly behind us, are where they kept the spotlight guys. Good thing you can't stand up tall enough to accidentally get in front of one of those things, because that would just blind you being that close to them. But anyway, I thought that was interesting. But, I was thinking all that bass information was just hitting there, and it was reflecting off, and we were like getting it in the chest, clear up that high. And so, like, you could feel in chest. And I was showing my wife, like, some of these guys on YouTube, they claim to have the best bass, and it's nothing but bass in their cars and stuff like that. It's so loud, in fact, that like when ladies sitting there with long hair, it can literally make their hair blow, like crazy blow. Because as you know, bass is just air movement, but it happens to be at a frequency that our bodies can feel and our ears can even hear down to a certain point. And so that was kind of one of those things, like when you say you're the best, well, okay, is it the best sounding though, or did you just manage to produce the most decibels at the lowest frequency? And I think that that's kind of where we have to decide things here. Now, what I'm getting at here is everything is objective. Did you hear me say, like, I think that this was the best sound because I'm a critique and I have my own preference, versus from a technical perspective over here, was it really the best? So you could look at anything in life like that. So when you say, going back to the Simone Biles analogy, she's got tricks. She does everything better than anyone else. But people call her the GOAT, right? The greatest of all time. And I'm not going to denounce what she does, because Lord knows, anyone who can flip that many times in the air and land on 2 feet and make it look like that, just stick it, is phenomenal, really. And it is a hard act to beat. I didn't say it was going to be easy to beat. I just said it would be difficult. But the thing is they're calling her the GOAT. And the key word is the T at the end of that. Time. Ever in history. There will never be another, right? You can't say that. When another Iowa gal who started out, Shawn Johnson, I remember when she was doing the Olympics, she was doing stuff that no one else really did. And she was considered the best at the time. And, she won, Olympic gold medals and things like that too. So, but then Simone's now doing stuff that Shawn Johnson didn't do. And, you can go to any concert. There's always going to be improvements to the equipment, to the speakers, to the design, all of it. So it's the best right now. But is it going to be the best at all times? No. And I think that's going to be the same for anything. And now here's where I want to add like a humanistic kind of standpoint to it. I'm going from an ability or a technical ability. Now I'm going to be talking to us as people. You guys know me. I'm really good with this type of narrative, and you follow me down my rabbit hole, and hopefully you're tracking along with me. So when you have a person who's claiming to be the best, like I said, I think it's more self-serving because you're trying to insinuate that you will never be beaten at anything you ever do in life. Now, sometimes you brag on yourself when you're going for a job interview because you want the job, you need to show all your qualifications, but I don't think it's bad in a job interview to show some humbleness too. That's why they always ask you, what were some of the weaknesses that you had? How did you overcome them? Or what were some of the biggest challenges that you dealt with and then overcome? I think that it's important. Like me, if I was going to hire somebody, I want to see that. I want to see a little bit of vulnerability because it tells me that that person is going to be open for coaching, open for development, open for improvement, rather than putting themselves on a pedestal and going, on their own world and thinking that their way is always going to be right. I don't think that that's fair. And you've probably heard something similar to what I'm telling you before. Like what I'm saying isn't really anything new, but I think it's important right now as we look at the world and we look at views and we think that we're right, we think this person's wrong, and we have to kind of meet in the middle. Now, for me as a Christian, it's even harder because I see sin, I see things going on around me, and I really want to call it out. I want to say, no, you're wrong, this is right. And there is a time and place for education and even rebuction. But there's also a place to pray about something, to think about something carefully, and approach it at an angle that is more in line, as a Christian, I can say this, with how God would want us to approach it, rather than just doing the knee-jerk reaction and immediately going into like attack mode, if you will. So those are things. So being measured in how you approach something. I was having a discussion with someone else, another friend of mine, and it sort of evolved around this idea of religion and this idea that, I don't need to go to church to know that I'm a good person. All religion is really just a philosophical viewpoint on, right and wrong. And I don't need to go to church to know that I'm right or wrong, and what's right and wrong. Well, you don't go to church to know if you're right or wrong. You pretty much just need to assume you've been wrong your whole life. If you've never accepted Christ in your life, every one of us will fall short of the glory of God. That's sort of the point behind, admitting you're a sinner. And then the salvation comes when you realize that you need Christ for every single thing in your life, and that he's the only reason that you will have everlasting life. You can say that you kind of have this idea. Obviously, we should all agree that killing someone is wrong, very wrong. But it's another thing to say that I know that there's something more to this world, there's something more to this life, and that Jesus Christ is bigger than my life and anyone else's life. No one else will ever compare to that. It's easy for me to say that, but to an atheist or an agnostic person, it'd be really hard for me to tell them, who's never experienced the truth that I know, that their truth is wrong just by telling them about my truth. So when I approach that, I have to approach it in a very different way. And I have to approach it as a way of relating my experiences to them. And it might start out something like, hey, I've dealt with this thing too. and share a story about, how I've been similar to them, and then lead into where it became evident to me that, following Christ is right and wrong. And I really struggle with things like that because everyone seems to think that they're a good person just because in their mind, their moral standards, they hold up to them, but they're not everybody's moral standards. And sometimes we can't, well, not sometimes, all the time, in my case, I can't hold myself to what I think is right and wrong. I have to hold myself to what God said is right and wrong. That's the standard that I have to hold up to. And for our children, they start to sort of formulate their own moral standards, what's right and what's wrong, and why they do something and why they don't do something. And they don't really even have an explanation for it, especially if you're like my 4-year-old. You ask them, why were you downstairs playing in the basement? Normally you don't go down there. Well, you're not supposed to go down there without us, just because of all the studio stuff, and we don't want him getting into stuff, and it's an area where we can't watch him directly. So we don't really like him going down here by himself. And so I'll ask him, why'd you do it? And you're like, I don't know. I just don't know. And so that's kind of the thing I wanted to kind of instill for parents, circling back to this dad thing, is you can't let them measure themselves by their own standards. You start by having them see your example, your standards of right and wrong, and it's more than just telling them, it's living it out. And so being humble, being considerate to this idea of patience and understanding will go a long way, but never, ever, ever call yourself the best at moral standards, at justifications, at anything, at an ability, a skill. I would encourage everyone, do not call yourself the best. You're not. You might be really good even in some ranking in some sport or some event or activity. You might be ranked number 1, but you will fall off that number 1 spot. Everything that you think you're really good at, the best at right now, it is not going to last forever. It will not. And I want to finally wrap up this with tying this into what goes on to our world. When we have, still going on protests, riots, things like that, this whole new movement, in Des Moines, it was nice to see this last week. They didn't have an interruption in a city council meeting, but before, people just stand up and they shout and they sit in and they frankly act like 4-year-olds. There is a way that we have to handle certain situations. They think that their moral standard is right and that this is the only way they're going to get through to the government to change something that they believe is wrong. And you have a group of people, and when a group of people who seem to have the similar thought process and same moral goal, as in what's right, what's wrong with policing or with, dealing with race issues, with inequities and inequalities and stuff like that. When you have a group of people who all think this way, it's easy to get emboldened by that idea, rather than taking what you think is a minority viewpoint and actually weighing it equally to your standard that you've already had for a long time. And so that's kind of the goal here, is how do we remain objective when we've always surrounded ourselves with like-minded people? As individuals, we do that, and we sort of develop this sort of inner culture, if you will follow me here, of we all agree on the same things. And since we all agree on the same things, we must be right. And everybody else who thinks differently is wrong. And it allows us to close our minds off to any other thought process, any other thinking or line of thinking. And I think that where you truly develop what is the standard that you go off of in life doesn't happen by simply being around a certain group of people. I think it happens when your mind tells you, and your heart even tells you, that I may think this way now, but if someone wants to talk to me about something that I might be passionate about, I'm going to be mature enough and wise enough to let that person talk. Even at the end of the day, I don't agree with them and my position remains unchanged. Because we can't change another person's mind. In my world, only God can change a person's heart. We can present them with all the evidence. We can come alongside them. We can love them. We can care for them. We can just show them every example that we can of, the standard that we try to live to. but we also have to show them that we're not perfect in that standard. If you're a Christian like myself, that we don't have it all together. We don't have everything figured out. We're not the best. We're just, I'll quote something that was from last night's concert. We're just a bunch of dorks up here. I'm just a dork behind a camera, behind a microphone. When I get done with here, I'm gonna probably go deal with my son and do some work here on the computer. I'm not doing anything fun or fancy today. I'm just here talking to you guys. I have a thought in my mind. I have a show, an idea, and I just want to help somebody. But I'm not coming at this from a position of thinking that I'm the best in the world at doing this. I want this thing to grow. I want to reach more people. I've said before I'd like sponsorships. That isn't because I want to make the show and get rich off of it. It's just because I want to be able to reach a lot of people. And unfortunately, things like this do cost money if I want to grow. And I don't think it's wrong to have a business. I don't think it's wrong to have money. I just think it's wrong with when you gloat about it and you use it for your own self-serving purposes. Because no matter where you are in life, even if you're the best or the richest or anything like that, this whole thing is all temporary. And if you're watching this video and you've been thinking like my friend and you just know what's right and wrong, you don't really need church or you don't need religion to tell you that, you're the best at being you. If you think, well, you do you and I'll do me. If you think like that, that's wrong. And hopefully you've taken the context here to understand why I think that's wrong and why I think you should think that's wrong too. Because it doesn't allow for you to grow as a person. It doesn't allow you to mature. You get stuck and you'll get stuck in the stagnant thing of it's easy just to say, well, okay, John, that's good for you. That's good. I'm happy that you have this standard and that you do this and all that, but I'm just going to do me. Okay, I'm just going to do me because I'm okay. I don't need your Jesus talk. All right? I don't need that. And I'm not saying that everything that I'm doing here, you could relate this to anything in life. You could relate this to, maybe you're a welder and you're trying to have an apprentice underneath you and they just sort of get it. I've seen this at work. We get new hires and they go in there and like, I know. I'll do this. And then you, as someone who's been there for like, a couple of years or even longer, you can see their mistakes every single day. Little ones. I don't know. It could be something simple. It could be something big. And you just think to yourself, man, I just wish they'd listen. If they just took the time to listen, they'd have learned that, no, this isn't how they want us to do it. And so for me, it's that same feeling when I want to talk to people about Jesus. It becomes this thing of, I just wish they'd listen. I don't know how to make them convince them. I can't. They're going to have to figure it out on their own. I teach them as best I can and I'll show them examples. But at the end of the day, that's all I can really do. So that's all I'm going to say is don't be the best. Just strive for it. Always strive to be better. And remember, all of us are going to die someday. And no matter what possessions you have, no matter what wealth you have in this world, it's all in vain. I think the best thing you can leave behind is the idea of how you think about others and how you think about growing and maturing. And the best thing you can do if you want to leave something behind, teach your kids, teach your family, your friends. If you don't have kids, all that, those are all important things that you can leave behind. Good friends and who you instilled some new thoughts and mindsets and new ways of thinking, and they actually, thought about it more. I think those are the best things that we can leave behind, once we're gone from this world, because it is all just temporary. And I do believe there is an afterlife. I think there's something more. And for me, that's Jesus Christ. I hope that's for you too. I hope it's heaven. I hope that there's salvation, that there's no one thing, there's no sin, there's no thing that's, there's no sin that's greater than another. I know that's hard to believe, but that's what my book called the Bible teaches. We all fall short of the glory of God. We're all going to fall short, no matter how good, no matter how well we do something, we're always going to fall short. So, well, I'm wrapping this thing up, guys, here. I just want to remind you guys, please like and subscribe. I know I said it in the beginning of the video. I'm going to say it here. It's so important for me right now, and I know this I'm not trying to like grow here, but the only way I can in the digital world is to, get shares, get likes, get comments, and all of that. That's the most important thing I can do. So, well, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you guys listening to Between the Lines. Again, my name is John Lofton. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And you guys have a good one. We'll see you next week. Same time, same place at 4 p.m.